Angle on Vicky that moment.
She watches as Shaw climbs out of the truck, numb, in a daze. He signals to the wrecking ball operator. A whistle blows, and the great iron ball knocks a mammoth hole in the facade of the tenement. Shaw doesn't even stick around to watch it. He scurries off to his car at the end of the block. Vicky, highly intrigued, gets it all on film.
Internal Gotham Globe City Room Day.
Vicky's in a huddle with the managing editor, Schultz, showing him her photos. Shaw orchestrating the eviction of the squatter family.
Great stuff. But we're looking at a shit fight with our beloved publisher. He and Shaw? Old money sticks together.
Vicky points to a photo of Shaw racing from the truck to his car.
I'd sure like to know what shook him up so. He was out there like a scared rabbit.
Just then, a reporter, Wilk, rushes up excitedly to Schultz's desk.
Excuse me. Got a blind tip from downtown. You know that massacre on the docks? Batman.
Vicky racks in astonishment. Schultz's jaw drops. This is hot.
Whoa! Is this on the level?
Cops even got a note. Those who feed the soul of Gotham will suffer my wrath. Sounds like your pals cranked it up a notch.
Vicky starts to protest, but thinks better of it.
Internal Wayne Manor Entry Hall Evening.
Alfred opens the door. A banner headline stares him in the face. Batman implicated in Dock Massacre. Industrialist linked to drug smuggling ring. Vicky, who's holding up the afternoon paper for Alfred's inspection, peeks out glumly from behind the masthead.
Seen the late edition?
I'm afraid so, Miss Vale. Master Bruce is sequestered in the cave.
Internal Bruce's library a moment later evening.
On their way to the Batcave, Alfred and Vicky pass through the library. They pause in front of the television, which is tuned to a panel show, with various experts discussing the hot issue of the day.
Walter Barrett's no saint. His factories have been dumping poison into the air and water for years. If he is mixed up with drugs, that's not the issue. The issue is, do we entrust our public safety to some masked vigilante? Does Batman have license to kill?
The public. Dishearteningly fickle.
Vicky follows Alfred out. We hold on the TV as the camera pans over to the third guest on the panel, loudly demanding airtime. He's wearing a red beret and a Batman sweatshirt.
Yo, here's the tip, man. Drug dealers are scum. If Batman did wax these punks, so what? They deserve it. End of discussion.
Internal Batcave a moment later evening.
Alfred and Vicky arrive. Bruce gestures for them to keep quiet. He's hunched over a tape recorder, and Commissioner Gordon's voice is blaring from a nearby speaker.
Anyone could have written that note.
Internal Gordon's office that moment.
Gordon's in conference with a number of city officials, blissfully unaware that anyone might be eavesdropping.
And I suppose anyone could have taken out a boatload of armed thugs. 12 men, Jim, murdered in cold blood.
Before we forget, Batman saved hundreds of lives.
He's still a vigilante. We don't know who he is, where he comes from, why he does it. Street punks are one thing, Jim. This is Walter Barrett, a personal friend of mine.
As the conversation continues, camera slowly moves in on a computer terminal in the corner. We see the tiny trademark embossed on the CPU. Wayne Technologies.
Internal Batcave that moment on Bruce.
As he listens through his concealed bug.
You've got to bring him in, Jim. At least for questioning. It would sure help if we could get that mask off.
Bruce shuts the recorder off. He turns to face Alfred and Vicky.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been framed.
External Gotham City night.
The bat signal blazing in the night sky. After a beat, the camera tilts down to a cluster of excited citizens who point and holler as the Batmobile streaks past.
Internal squad car that moment.
2 cops are parked in an alleyway, watching as the Batmobile whizzes past on the street. The driver pulls out behind it as the second cop grabs his radio mic.
1 Delta 9er, 1080 on Riverview, northbound at 33rd. 1078, repeat, 1078.
10-4, 1 Delta 9er, that's a 1037, repeat, 1037, back up on the way.
External street on Batmobile.
Barreling towards us on the street, the squad car gains behind it. A siren howls. A red and blue bubble begins to flash. The Batmobile makes a hairpin turn and accelerates.
Overhead angle the streets.
As the Batmobile rounds the corner and picks up speed, 2 more squad cars scream down the cross street, joining in the pursuit. All at once, thick black smoke billows from the back of the Batmobile, enveloping the police cars, blinding the drivers.
External street that moment night.
2 squad cars, parked in a V formation, a makeshift roadblock. Anxious policemen mill about in front of them. They move into position as the Batmobile, still trailing smoke, rounds a corner and careens directly toward them.
Angle on Batmobile that moment.
The front fender of the Batmobile detaches and extends itself from the body of the car. It bends in the middle. Wing panels flip into place, forming an arrowhead-shaped cow catcher.
External street on roadblock.
A shrieking horn blares. The cops see the Batmobile speeding up and dive for the sidewalk. The cowcatcher slams into the squad cars, pushes them effortlessly aside, and cruises through the gap. As the pursuing cars emerge from the smoke cloud and follow the Batmobile through, we tilt up to the roof of a nearby building.
External rooftop that moment.
And realize that the Batmobile's on automatic pilot, because Batman's been on the roof all along, watching the action with some dismay. His relationship with the Gotham PD appears to be on shaky ground. He speaks into his voice-activated remote control unit.
Evasive.
Sirens howl below as he strolls across the rooftop, lost in thought.
Cut to internal penthouse apartment night.
At this height, the sirens are a distant insect drone. We're in the palatial digs of Randall Shaw, the construction magnate. There's obviously money to be made in real estate development, because the walls are lined with art, and the floor-to-ceiling windows open on the most spectacular view in Gotham. At the moment, Shaw's posing casually in front of his new Brancusi, which rests on a pedestal near the windows. An unidentified woman in a slinky black dress looks on, her back to the camera.
It's a fake.
It cost me $500,000. You're sure?
Absolutely. You see, I happen to know where the real one is stashed.
The woman wanders out of frame as Shaw smiles, impressed. He seems peculiarly nonchalant about the whole deal. At the moment, art is not the first thing on his mind. Camera stays on him as he pours 2 glasses of red wine and circles in on his mysterious guest.
I guess you know, I have some friends in the art world. They say that for certain hard-to-get items, you're the one to call.
How flattering.
They say for the right price, you could steal the Michelangelo off the Sistine Chapel wall.
Mr. Shaw, do you believe everything you hear?
Oh, I'm not one to judge. I admire people who take what they want. I'm just curious how you do it.
Shaw hands her the wine, and for the first time we see her face. It's Selina Kyle, perching seductively on the arm of the sofa.
I find that the old methods work best.
Setting her wine down, flashing her patented Cheshire Cat smile, Selina moves in on him, and they go into a deep, passionate kiss. Her long red nails dig into his back. Shaw drops his wine glass, which shatters, splashing red wine across the polished parquet floor.
Internal penthouse Shaw's bedroom night.
The action's gone horizontal. Selina, peeled down to a sheer lace teddy, is on the bed atop Shaw, tickling his throat with quick, lapping kisses. She rolls off suddenly. When he tries to sit up, she pushes him back down with a single finger. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she peels off her stockings, twisting them around into tight cords. With a coy smile, she runs her finger in a circle around Shaw's hairy chest, and then, abruptly, knots one stocking tightly about his wrist and ties it off on the bedpost.
Hey, what are you doing?
He tries to break her grip. She backhands him sharply across the face.
You're very inquisitive. You'll just have to be disciplined.
An edgy smile spreads across his face as she binds his other hand to the bedpost. None too quick. He's just caught on that all this is part of Selina's kinky scene. She crosses quickly to the bathroom.
You know, I've never really done this kind of thing before.
And reemerges wearing her Catwoman mask, which seems perfectly appropriate in this context.
I think people should indulge in their fantasies. Don't you?
Now that he's all trussed up, she crosses the room and reaches into an oversized bag. She withdraws an odd-looking chromium brace, slips it on over her wrist, and hits a trigger. 6-inch steel talons snick into place. Shaw's dopey smile fades.
Hey, what are those? What are you?
He lets out an awful, shrill shriek as the camera whip pans away from the bed to a Jackson Pollock on the wall nearby. A spray of blood spatters across it in an aesthetically pleasing way, and the shriek ends in a low gurgle as we...
Cut to internal building lobby a few minutes later night.
A security guard is working a crossword at his booth near the entrance of the building. Behind him, a bank of monitors show various empty hallways throughout the building. He reaches for his coffee and sees a red light flashing on a wall panel nearby.
Internal Shaw's penthouse that moment.
The penthouse is throbbing with the clangorous sound of a burglar alarm. Selina is standing by an open wall safe, concealed behind a painting, which has been swung away on hinges, and she's holding her ears, wearing a look of complete exasperation. Oh, shit. The guard's voice crackles over a nearby intercom.
Mr. Shaw, what's going on up there? Mr. Shaw!
Furious with herself, she reaches inside the safe and extracts a black raven statuette, identical to the one she took on the docks. She slams the door shut and swings the picture back into place.
External streets that moment night.
Sirens echo in the streets. Squad cars make sudden turns and streak off toward Shaw's building.
External rooftop high-angle night.
Watching the cars from his rooftop vantage, Batman raises an antenna mounted on his utility belt and cups one hand to his head. An earpiece concealed inside his cowl gives him the police frequency.
Possible 15 in progress, 188 East 69th Street at Gotham Park West. Move out, it's Randall Shaw. Repeat, all unit.
Batman's eyes widen. He steps to the ledge and pulls a tiny metal cylinder from his belt, immediately recognizable as part of Bruce's hydraulic umbrella gizmo. But it's no umbrella. When Batman thumbs the switch, his black cape begins to spread and rise, stiffening, expanding, inflating itself into a pair of rigid black batwings. He steps off the ledge into midair, soaring silently across the street like a human hang glider as the cop cars cruise past far below.
Internal Shaw's bedroom night.
There's an awful banging at the front door. Shaw lies under the bloody sheets, hands folded, staring lifelessly up at the ceiling. Selina, now dressed in full Catwoman regalia, slings a lightweight knapsack over her shoulders. She picks up the nearest chair, rams it through Shaw's plate glass window, and clambers out onto the ledge outside. 10 seconds later, the cops burst in. They rush to the bedroom, spot the shattered window, the inert, gory mass on the bed. But the real shock comes when they glance over at the wall. Painted there in blood is a big, red, dripping bat.
Jesus!
External rooftop Shaw's building night.
40 stories up, the Catwoman, in a sure-footed crouch, she scurries along the ledge, springs at a cornice, and in one lithe motion vaults up onto the roof. She scampers across the rooftops, dropping from one to the next with the rope and tackle, like a mountain climber, until she reaches the building at the end of the block. Here she pauses to dig in her knapsack. She pulls out a retractable hook at the end of a rope, swings it around, heaves it at the rooftop across the street.
External street below low angle that moment.
Police pile out of cars and race for the entrance, totally oblivious to the odd scene taking place overhead, where the small, barely visible figure of a woman, clad entirely in black leather, is doing a tightrope walk across the intersection.
External rooftop a minute later night.
The Catwoman bounds across snowy rooftops until she decides she's out of danger. Then, wary and exhilarated, she drops to her knees. Bathed in moonlight, she preens, stretches, emits eerie little purrs and hisses of pleasure. She's just made a kill and her blood is running high, so she's stopped for a moment of quality time. She hears an odd crunching noise 2 roofs over. Her whole body tenses and, though her head doesn't move, her eyes dart left. A caped shadow has just touched down at the end of a line. The gold bat emblem on his chest is visible for the briefest of seconds before he steps back into the shadows. She acts like she hasn't noticed, but a little smile flickers across her lips just the same.
Tight on Batman that moment.
His eyes widen, his lips part as he watches her. If it's possible to see absolute consternation behind that mask, we're seeing it now.
His POV on Catwoman that moment.
She still doesn't let on that she's seen him. Instead, she goes to the ledge of the roof and begins to strut like a gymnast on the balance beam, posing for him in a little private show. A strange, self-infatuated, autoerotic dance routine for Batman's benefit.
External rooftop that moment.
His jaw is down around his knees. Whoa. He edges forward slightly, as if hypnotically drawn to her. She hears a noise, stops, makes a big show of looking left and right, somehow afraid she'll see him watching. Batman jumps back into the shadows. She gathers her things, a small white card flutters from her knapsack to the snowy roof, and she vanishes over the edge. Snapping back to reality, he bolts across the roof just in time to see
external side of building on Catwoman that moment night.
She's rapidly working her way down the side of the building, flipping down from one fire escape to the next, a master gymnast. 3 stories up, she lands on a railing, then stops, launching herself out over the street, making a perfect landing on the roof of a passing bus.
External rooftop on Batman that moment night.
Batman turns, and his eyes fall on the white card. He kneels to pick it up. A brief 3-word message is scrawled upon it. Looking for love? He goes goggle-eyed with astonishment. He rushes back to the edge of the roof and sees the bus just turning toward the entrance to Gotham Park. He's reaching for his grappling gun, figuring to follow, when a floodlight catches him full in the face.
External streets below that moment night.
Down below, the cops are sweeping their beams across the rooftops. 2 of them catch a quick glimpse of Batman just as he ducks back behind the cornice, out of view.
Hey, you see what I saw?
This sends the astonished cops rushing to their radios. Right on cue, Commissioner Gordon's car pulls up. Lieutenant Bullock, who's already on the scene, fills him in as he climbs out.
It's Randall Shaw, torn to ribbons. We just made Batman up on the roof.
Oh God.
External Gotham Park that moment night.
The bus rumbles deeper into the snowy park. A black silhouette springs off the roof into the trees, disappearing among the branches. We track with the bus as it moves through the park, arriving finally
external clearing in Park Shantytown night.
At the little colony of homeless people and their cardboard shacks and lean-tos, still occupying the future site of the park towers. Marchers and picketers are continuing their protest nearby, and some charitable organizations set up a makeshift soup kitchen on folding tables, hot coffee and sandwiches. Vicky's on the periphery of the camp, camera in hand. She's trying to persuade a homeless man to let his picture be taken.
Please, just one. It's important for people to see what's happening.
They don't want to see us, lady. They just want us gone. Out of sight and out of mind. Gets worse before it gets better. It always does.
Vicky turns. In the distance, the picketers are shrieking and wailing. A van's just pulled up to the edge of the park, and a dozen hard hats are elbowing their way through the crowd. All at once, they're swarming through Shantytown with tire irons and baseball bats, overturning the sandwich tables, ripping down the shabby tents and lean-tos. Some of the homeless people run. Those who resist are met with swift and sudden violence. A marcher jumps a hard hat and gets a baseball bat in the gut for his trouble. Vicky waits for the police sirens, but they don't come. She backs off towards the trees. She begins snapping photos frantically, capturing the carnage on film. A hard hat is dismantling a lean-to with his tire iron, sending the terrified family inside scurrying off into the snow. When he glances up and sees Vicky taking his picture, he points out to a colleague. And suddenly the 2 of them are rushing toward her with pure cold malice in their eyes. Vicky turns to run, but it's slow going in the snow. She slips and falls. Her attackers are almost upon her, when a shadowy figure dives out of the trees and tackles one of the hard hats. The figure lands a powerhouse blow to the fallen hard hat's jaw, knocking him out cold. The second hard hat turns and lifts his tire iron, but the figure, with surprising agility, is already rolling out of the way. As he rolls, he grabs the first guy's hard hat off his head and brings it up in front of him, blocking the blow from the second guy's tire iron. In the same motion, he plants a foot in the second hard hat's belly and sends him reeling backward. Hard hat 2 drops the tire iron, and the figure snatches it out of midair as he gets to his feet. He moves in on the second hard hat, brandishing the iron, and while hard hat 2 is staring at it, the figure high kicks him in the face. Hop, kick, hop, kick. The figure has nailed him 3 times squarely on the jaw before he can hit the ground. The figure turns toward Vicky. Her eyes go wide with astonishment. It's a kid, 13 or 14 at the outside, sunken-eyed, grimy looking, in a torn and tattered raincoat. She stares at him for the briefest of instants before he rushes off to the aid of his fellow homeless. She can't believe what she's seeing. The kid weighs smack into the mist of the remaining hard hats and kicks ass, spinning, pirouetting, kicking, clawing in a furious display of pure athleticism. It seems like he's everywhere at once. There's only one other guy in Gotham City who can handle himself like this. Rallying behind him, the marchers and homeless people snatch bats and tire irons from the fallen hard hats, and the tide turns. The invasion is being repelled. Faced with renewed resistance, the few hard hats still left standing turn tail and race off to their van. Triumph in Shantytown. The marchers and homeless cluster together to lick their wounds, and the kid, satisfied that everything is under control, turns and sprints off toward the trees. But one prostrate hard hat is only playing dead. As the kid runs past, the hard hat extends a tire iron into his path, tripping him, sending him sprawling in the snow. The kid throws up his hands as the hard hat prepares to smash down at him. Clang! The hard hat drops his tire iron and topples over, bored-like. The kid looks up and sees Vicky standing there with a baseball bat. He gives her a quick nod of acknowledgement as he gets to his feet. Thanks for returning the favor. He's about to light out again when...
Wait! Don't be afraid. I wanted to thank you.
20.
What?
$20.
Vicky's mildly taken aback, but she reaches for her purse just the same. She's barely gotten her wallet open when the kid snatches the bill out of her hands. They stare at each other for a long moment.
Who are you?
Dick.
And then he's bounding off like a shot, vaulting up into a tree and vanishing amid the snowy branches. Vicky starts to follow, but there's no way she can keep up. Instead, she digs into her camera bag.
Her POV through telephoto lens.
Using the long lens, she tracks the kid's progress through the treetops. She can't actually see him, but occasional chunks of snow and ice are falling to the ground as he jumps from limb to limb. For a moment, it seems like she's lost him. As she sweeps the lens back and forth, scanning the trees, she catches sight of an equestrian statue in the distance. She ups the magnification so she can see the plaque on the pedestal. The stone figure on the horse is Union war hero General Oliver Wayne, Bruce's great-grandfather. As luck would have it, the kid drops to earth not 10 feet from the statue. Vicky's got him in her sights again. He looks around cautiously to make sure no one's following, then races toward a stone bridge which arches between 2 small hillocks over a frozen creek. There's a drainage tunnel, 4 feet in diameter, mounted in the bridge abutment. The kid pries off a wire grate and clambers inside, then pulls the grate back into place behind him. Home sweet home.
External park on Vicky night.
As she lowers the lens, her face is full of conflicting emotions. She'd love to corner this boy vigilante and find out what his story is. But on the other hand, even the homeless are entitled to their privacy.
Cut to internal penguin's aviary night.
A canary sings in its cage as a black cat watches, transfixed from a nearby chair. The cat arches its back, waits, and springs at the cage, batting at it in midair. The canary shrieks. The cat yowls. A woman snatches it up off the floor and cradles it in her arms.
Now, Hecate, you don't want that scrawny little bird.
It's Selena, looking ripe and slinky in a sheer black ensemble. At the desk behind her is the Penguin, in his customary cutaway and waistcoat, polishing his new raven. He bares his teeth.
Do you want me to wring that creature's neck?
You try it, I'll do the same to you. I saw him, you know.
Saw who?
Batman. He was dreamy.
She strokes the cat, in a reverie. The Penguin drops his polishing cloth, startled.
Dreamy? Are you insane? My God. Are you sure that was him? What did he do?
He stood on a roof and watched me. He didn't realize I'd seen him. I don't think he knew quite what to make of me, but he was definitely interested.
This sends the Penguin into a frantic round of pacing, or waddling.
This scheme of yours is backfiring. We don't need him on our tails. Do you know how much money's at stake here?
Money isn't everything. What's the point if we can't enjoy ourselves?
She chuckles to herself. He stares at her in disbelief and squawks.
Cut to external Gotham Square morning.
The big red sign over Gotham Square tells us there are only 9 shopping days left until Christmas. Down below, Bruce is walking Vicky to work.
6 on 1. He took them all out. Then vanished into a drainage pipe, right next to the statue of General Wayne.
My illustrious great-grandfather. You think it's the same kid we heard about?
Must be. He reminded me of you.
Bruce chuckles. They pass a newsstand just outside the Globe building, pausing to stare at the headlines, which scream, New Bat Murder. Batman suspect in slaying a millionaire developer. Commissioner Gordon refuses comment. The accompanying photo is a full-color spread of the bloody red bat painted on Shaw's wall. Bruce scowls at Vicky.
You work for this rag. Your boss is calling for Gordon's resignation, unless he brings Batman in for questioning.
Vicky nudges Bruce and points to a storefront across the street.
Their POV souvenir shop.
The owner is in the store window, hastily removing all of his Batman merchandise and setting up the new displays devoted to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and The Simpsons. A mother drags her squirming toddler past the entrance. The kid smells heavy markdowns on bat shit, but Mom clearly does not approve.
Back to scene on Bruce and Vicky.
Looking on in dismay, Bruce crumbles the paper in outrage.
I need a good PR man.
Hey pal, you buying or borrowing?
With a sullen look, Bruce tosses the paper back on the rack. Vicky pulls him off toward the entrance of the Globe.
That's what happens when you go after the rich and powerful.
Hey, it wasn't me, remember? I am rich and powerful.
As he's talking, Bruce glances at the newsstand. He sees an ad flyer tacked up on one side. Looking for love? Find it in the Gotham Globe personals. Looking for love. Eyes widening, he digs into his pocket for a quarter and races back to the newsstand. Vicky keeps walking.
Maybe it's almost good. In a weird way, I mean, Shaw and Barrett. If people like that were really scared, maybe they'd...
She suddenly realizes she's talking to herself. She turns around and sees Bruce back at the newsstand, hurriedly unfolding a copy of the Globe. She marches back and tugs at his sleeve.
Hey, I'm late for work. You can read that later.
Quiet. I'm looking for a personal ad.
Her face screws up in confusion as Bruce frantically scans the page.
Tall, dark, and handsome. You saw me on the roof, 12:16. I was in black. You were too.
Is this some kind of a bad joke?
It's her. That Catwoman, or whatever she is. I jumped a bus into Gotham Park, hoping you'd follow, but you were too shy.
What does she want? A date?
She's trying to contact me. Says she's going to leave me another ad.
The two of them exchange a look of utter perplexity. Bruce's mind is racing. He seems bizarrely aroused in a way that makes Vicky a trifle nervous.
Internal Gotham Globe City Room Day.
Vicky arrives at her desk and sets her portfolio down. She spots a message in the in file. She takes one look at it, and her eyes go wide with rage. She storms out in a fury.
Internal publisher's office a minute later day.
Barging past a phalanx of secretaries, Vicky bursts into the inner office of Harrison J. Provost, publisher of the Globe. He is just opening his mail. He heaves a weary sigh as Vicky barks at him.
Why did you kill my story?
Close the door. Your story isn't news. We've sure did.
But the project's still going ahead. If attacking the homeless people in the park isn't news, I'd like to know what is.
There's a psycho out there in a mask and cape, killing off Gotham's most prominent citizens. That's news.
Vicky fumes. She turns and stares at Provost straight in the eye.
Mr. Props, how much money do you have tied up in the Park Tower project?
Vicky, I'm going to forget you made that remark. For the sake of your job, I suggest you do the same.
Vicky stalks off, and Provost goes back to his mail. He finds an envelope addressed in a shaky, psychotic scrawl, and the word confidential underlined 3 times in ink. He tears it open, and his face turns pale as he stares down to the contents. A small business-sized card signed with a bat emblem. Those who feed on the soul of Gotham will suffer my wrath.
Cut to External Gotham Hall of Justice Day.
Walter Barrett and his attorney emerge onto the front steps of the courthouse. Barrett is instantly mobbed by reporters.
Mr. Barrett, any comment on the arraignment?
Is it true bail was set at $2 million?
Stand back. McNair has nothing to say at this time.
The attorney clears a path for Barrett, who climbs into the waiting car. Shielding his face, reporters cluster around it. As the car pulls out into traffic, we see a flock of pigeons taking wing from their perches on the statues outside the Hall of Justice.
Overhead shot on Barrett's car.
Pigeons fill the frame, swooping down toward the car, which is idling at a traffic light far below.
Internal Barrett's car that moment.
The livid driver drums his fingers as he waits for the lights to change. Barrett's in the back, speaking into his cellular phone.
It's time we called an emergency meeting of the Raven Society. Get back to me.
Looking troubled, he hangs up. A fat white glob of pigeon shit splatters across the windshield. Seconds later, another splat.
Damn pigeons.
Just washed it too.
The driver reaches for the wiper switch. They hear a tiny dink as a solid pellet bounces off the windshield. Barrett and the driver exchange a mystified look. A small blinking capsule has just lodged in the wiper blade assembly.
Overhead shot on Barrett's car.
Just as the light changes, the car explodes into a million fragments, leaving a blackened crater in the middle of the intersection.
Cut to Internal Batcave Day.
The Flugelheim called again, sir. They wish to know if you'll be attending the opening of the new Egyptian exhibit.
Cancel.
And citing new evidence in the so-called string of millionaire murders, Police Commissioner J.T. Gordon today swore out a warrant for the arrest of Batman. We now go live to Mike Zakowski, spokesperson, Order of the Bat.
Jeez, talk about gratitude.
Well, Alfred, it's official. I'm a wanted man. New evidence. I've got to find that woman. Did you check the personals?
As Alfred shakes his head no, a buzzer sounds. They've got a visitor. Bruce hits a switch on the monitor and sees Commissioner Gordon's car sitting outside the wrought iron gates of Wayne Manor. He throws a nervous look at Alfred. Alfred speaks into a microphone.
Who's there?
Jim Gordon, Alfred. I've got to see Bruce.
A spooky development. Does Gordon suspect? After a moment's hesitation, Bruce nods to Alfred. Let him in.
Mr. Wayne will see you, sir.
Internal Bruce's library a moment later.
A curious Bruce ushers Gordon into the library, gestures towards a liquor cabinet. The commissioner nods his head no. He's fidgety, ill at ease. He obviously doesn't want to be here.
Sorry to bother you. Bruce, I'll get right down to it. Unused, Shaw, and Barrett.
I saw him occasionally. We all sat on the board of the Flugelheim.
Did you have any dealings with him, or...?
No. I never liked the way they did business.
The thing is, Bruce, you're all lumped together in the public mind. The 5 families of Gotham, that sort of thing. Harrison Provost got this in the mail.
Bruce examines the card. Those who feed, etc. He stares at Gordon in mock concern, playing it close to the vest.
Then Batman is behind all this.
Batman, or a damn good imitation.
Well, he's changed tactics, hasn't he?
Shaw with his high rises, Barrett, a drug lord, major polluter. They weren't exactly model citizens. Who knows? It could be some crazy social conscience kind of thing.
You mean he's going after the root of the problem?
Gordon shakes his head and gets up to go. Bruce hands him the card.
Let me know if you get one of these. We'll put all our resources at your disposal.
Bruce nods thoughtfully as Alfred appears to see the Commissioner out. A moment later, the butler reappears.
Changed my mind, Alfred. I'll be dropping in on the Flugelheim after all.
Cut to Internal Flugelheim Museum Night.
It's a party to celebrate the opening of the new Egyptian exhibit, and the Flugelheim is hopping. Board members, museum patrons, and socialites mill about in dinner jackets and evening gowns, making small talk. An open sarcophagus has been set up as a wet bar. On a raised concrete platform in the center of the hall, rimmed by a decorative moat, sits an ancient Egyptian shrine. The Temple of Bastet has been moved to Gotham and reconstructed in the Flugelheim sandstone walls, fountains, statuary, and all. Guarding the entrance is a stately bronze statue of the goddess Bastet, who has the body of a woman and the head of a pointy-eared cat. She holds the aegis and the sistrum. 4 tiny kittens romp at her feet. Bruce, who has just arrived, is taking an intense interest in the cat goddess.
What is it?
I just had a weird sense of deja vu.
He glances over by the sarcophagus and sees Provost, the publisher, huddled with Elliot Tiptree III, transit magnate, the remaining member of Gotham's 5 families. The 2 of them are engaged in some urgent conversation, can't quite make out.
Harrison, we really ought to warn Bruce. We owe him that much.
Bruce detaches himself from Vicky and strolls towards them. Provost and Tiptree force smiles and wave, affecting an air of nonchalance.
The man's a space cadet. Let him look out for himself. Why, Bruce? What a delightful surprise!
Good to see you two. Looks like the 5 families are suddenly down to 3. In fact, if somebody dropped a bomb on this room right now...
Tiptree chuckles nervously. Provost is even less amused.
Is that your idea of a joke, Bruce?
Not at all. Commissioner Gordon seems to think we should all be hiring bodyguards.
Oh, that's absurd.
I already have.
The 2 of them glower at each other. It's like an outtake from the Newlywed Game. Bruce shrugs it off and makes a vacuous face.
Can't imagine why Batman would be after us. Can you?
Provost and Tiptree are about to go into another round of hemming and hawing when a new face joins the party. It's Selina Kyle, stunning as ever, in an extravagantly revealing dress slid up to the armpits. She's holding 2 glasses of champagne.
You 2 look like you need a drink. And is this who I think it is?
She flashes Bruce her most winning, seductive, heavy artillery smile. He blinks, temporarily speechless.
Selina Kyle, Bruce Wayne.
Our absentee board member. I've been wanting to meet you forever.
Selina's the new curator of antiquities. She brought the temple over block by block.
You 2 won't be terribly upset if I borrow Bruce for a moment, will you?
Before he can protest, she's linked an arm around him and dragged him off. A nearby fat man spots Selina, wiggles his eyebrows, and waves bright. His tongue is practically hanging out. He's just dying to write her a check.
Major contributor. I always seem to wind up in charge of fundraising.
I can't imagine why.
Tax year's almost over, you know. I hope we can count on your usual generous donation. Someone's got to set an example for those 2 tightwads.
They're preoccupied. This string of murders.
I asked them if they'd consider including us in their wills. They didn't seem a bit amused.
Angle on Vicky that moment.
She's making small talk with a bunch of stuffed shirts and their overdressed wives. She glances across the room at the statue of Bastet, sees Selina draped all over Bruce. A frown crosses her face.
Angle on Bruce and Selina that moment.
She's still clinging to his arm as they stare up at the statue.
And this is my good friend Bastet, the Egyptian cat goddess.
I think we've already met. This is quite an exhibition you've put together.
I'm glad you think so. I have to say, Bruce, you're not at all what I expected.
Sorry to disappoint you.
Oh, it's not that. Not at all. It's just that I'd always heard you were...
What?
Oh, sort of
No, come on. What?
Bruce's state of mounting infatuation is abruptly shattered when Vicky sidles up to him and territorially takes his other arm. The women exchange big, toothy plastic smiles. Stranded in the middle, Bruce realizes they're waiting for him to introduce them.
Oh, Selena Kyle? My friend Vicky Vale.
The photographer. I've seen your pictures in the Gazette.
The Globe?
Oh, that's right. The tabloid one. What an original dress.
Vicky, still smiling, cocks an eyebrow at Bruce. He senses trouble coming and tries to head it off at the pass.
Selena supervised the reconstruction of the temple. Brought it back from Egypt, stone by stone.
Really? She must be awfully tired. How'd you get to be in charge of a huge project like this?
It was easy. I slept with the pharaoh.
She laughs at her own joke. Vicky responds with a dry little chuckle of her own. Selena gives Bruce a sharp yank on the sleeve.
Excuse us, won't you, sweetheart? We have some boring museum business to talk about.
Vicky fumes. Bruce shrugs apologetically as Selena drags him off out of earshot.
Short leash.
Pull in the claws, okay? She's really terrific.
I'm sorry, Bruce. Sometimes I get a little aggressive, you know? Look, I need to talk to you. Come by sometime. I'll give you the private tour.
Wait. Let me explain about Vicky.
Shh. I understand. Anyone who's that protective must have a pretty good reason.
She shoots him one last smile. Sly, conspiratorial, unmistakably juicy. Then she's off in pursuit of another major funder. Bruce is thoughtfully turning the card over in his hands when Vicky rejoins him.
How's business?
Relax, okay? I like you better.
He scans the room, trying to find Provost and Tiptree. No luck.
If you're looking for your fellow millionaires, they left some time back.
Cut to internal rooftop night.
The roof of the Gotham Globe. A starling circles overhead for a moment, then dives down an exposed ventilation shaft.
Internal Gotham Globe that moment.
2 armed bodyguards are standing watch outside an office. Brass letters on the door read J. Harrison Provost, publisher.
Internal Provost's office that moment.
Provost, agitated, working late. He speaks sotto voice into the phone.
Don't worry about that. I've had the office wet for bugs. No one is listening.
Internal Tiptree's library that moment night.
Tiptree is in his panel study at home. There's an open bottle on the table, and he's been hitting the sauce hard. His voice quavers.
It's just so damn unfair. I mean, it was over a century ago. It's not like we were responsible. How could we know? How could Batman know about the Raven Society?
Internal office on Provost that moment.
Who knows? And who cares? The point is, it's happened.
He hears a chirp and looks up. It seems to be coming from a heating vent on the wall. But then it stops, so he resumes his conversation.
I'm clearing out of the country, and I'm taking the Raven with me. I suggest you do the same.
Internal heating vent that moment.
In the metal shaft on the other side of the grate is a tiny bird, the same one we saw flying down the air shaft. Now that we get a close-up view, we can see the thin battery pack wired to its underbelly, and a miniature microphone taped to its leg.
I'll tell you how to reach me, and don't repeat this to anyone.
Cut to internal Penguin's lair day.
The penguin stands over his indoor penguin pool. He's wearing rubber gloves, feeding live fish from an ice chest to his Arctic birds. The vents in the windows are open, and the climate in the room is downright icy, as Selena's wrapped in fur, stroking her pet cat.
He's just another rich idiot. The odd thing is, he didn't seem a bit concerned.
Then he's an idiot.
He lives in some big, sprawling manor. I'll have to get inside, scope it out, see where he's got the Raven stashed.
How do you plan to do that?
How do you think?
A feline smile from Selena. The penguin chuckles to himself, lobs a fish out over the pool. A swooping gull snatches out of the air before it hits the water. Frick arrives in the doorway.
It's Mr. Provost, sir. He's planning to embark on an unscheduled Christmas vacation.
Good. That should save us a trip to the bank.
Cut to internal Flugelheim backroom day.
A huge open room cluttered with all kinds of junk, archaeologist tools, restoration equipment, etc., plus a healthy assortment of curios and oddities from all over. This is Selina's private domain. We track past a glass case full of ugly, withered, turd-like specimens.
What have we got here?
Mummified cats. Bastat's a sacred animal. They were buried by the thousands at Bubastis. Oh, careful.
Bruce freezes with his hand poised over a set of 4 earthen jars. Each has a lid carved in the shape of a head. Ape, jackal, man, falcon.
Canopic jars. In the process of mummification, the internal organs were buried separately. Lungs, stomach, liver, intestine.
Bruce withdraws his hand with a bemused shudder.
You're in a gruesome line of work.
Keeps me interested. And that's not easy to do.
Bruce's attention turns to a crumbling statuette of an odd beast, a winged lion with the head of a falcon.
Oh, this one I know. It's a griffin, right?
Very good. A mythical demon, half bird, half lion, sweeping down from the sky to deliver retribution and justice.
Bruce nods. He can dig it. He regards the griffin for a long moment and chuckles.
Guy. Birds and cats? You wouldn't think the two halves would cooperate.
Only under certain circumstances. I'm really glad you came, Bruce. I was afraid I'd given you the wrong impression. Or maybe it was the right impression.
What was it you wanted to talk to me about?
Your collection. I'd love to see it. I mean, everyone says you've got a fabulous...
She toys demurely with her equipment. She looks up at Bruce and switches tactics, going for the direct approach. Bruce braces himself.
Mainly, I just want an excuse to see you again. Does she know you're here, Vicky?
No.
It must be strange. Having all that power and money, never really knowing if that's what people are attracted to.
What are you attracted to?
I think you're a little bit nuts. I think you're a little bored with your life. Having everything you want, no variety, no danger. And every once in a while, you need to take a risk. Shake it all up.
How?
Maybe by coming here today.
She leans back against a crate, moistens her lips. She's letting him have it with both barrels.
That's one thing I can give you, Bruce. Danger. A little something you can't get at home.
Bruce hesitates, but the lure is irresistible. He moves forward slowly. Selina's eyes close. Their lips draw slowly closer. And he sneezes in her face. He backs off in shock. As he covers his face, his eyes are watering and he's wheezing. She rushes over.
Are you okay?
Is there a cat in here?
Right on cue, Selina's black cat Hecate lets out a loud meow and stretches against Bruce's pants leg. He brushes the animal aside and it leaps into Selina's arms. Bruce sniffles uncontrollably.
Get it away!
She drops the cat, which scampers off. Bruce rubs his eyes.
Poor thing. You're allergic.
Yeah. Cats. Ever since I was a kid. Look, I better get some fresh air. Maybe another time, okay?
He heads for the door before Selina can stop him. He's gone, but she knows she's left a dent in his armor. She smiles in bemusement as Hecate jumps into her arms and purrs.
External Flugelheim a moment later day.
Bruce stumbles out of the museum, feeling mildly discombobulated. He marches down the front steps past the newsstand, where he stops to buy a copy of the Afternoon Globe. He opens it to the personal ads and finds what he's been waiting for. Tall, dark, and handsome. Christmas is coming. Why don't we trim the tree together? This puzzles him for a moment until he looks up the street. In the distance, at the very center of Gotham Square, workmen are stringing lights around an enormous Christmas tree, almost 50 feet tall. The lighting ceremony is an annual event in Gotham. Bruce smiles slightly, tucks the paper under his one arm, and walks to his car.
Resolve to. External Gotham Square night.
Snow falls on a huge crowd gathered round the big tree. The tree won't be lit for another 20 minutes or so, and so the onlookers are singing Christmas carols from printed lyric sheets. A band is playing on a makeshift orchestra platform erected in front of the tree, leading the crowd into a spirited rendition of God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. The square is rocking with goodwill toward men, when they get to the part about saving us all from Satan's power.
External rooftop overlooking square that moment night.
We look up to see Batman, watching the action from his usual gargoyle's perch. He's scanning the streets and the rooftops, waiting for the Catwoman to make her move, whatever it is. He glances at the building directly across the square from him. On the roof is a neon sign reading Gotham City Globe in ornate Old English letters, and above that, a rotating metal sculpture of the world turning. His eyes rove downward along the facade of the building.
External Gotham Globe that moment.
At street level, an armored car has pulled up in front of the Globe offices. 3 security guards with rifles climb out of the armored car, followed by a 4th, who has an oblong box handcuffed to his wrist. Of course, we can't see what's inside, but to those of us in the know, the box looks just about the right size for a raven statuette. The guards scan the street and enter the building without incident. As they do, a newspaper van appears down the road. Mounted on its side is an advertising placard which reads, Batman, Hero or Menace. Read all about it in the Gotham Globe.
External rooftop on Batman.
He watches with some curiosity. An armored car? Is this some part of Catwoman's scheme? But no, the guards are safely inside the building and the car is leaving. He settles back to wait.
Internal newspaper delivery van that moment.
The innocuous-looking van rounds the corner of the Globe building. Frick is at the wheel. Frack is riding shotgun, and the Penguin is between them, peering out eagerly through the windshield. They turn into the Globe's basement garage, where dozens of similar vans are parked at the loading bays, just part of the fleet.
Internal Provost's office a moment later.
The quartet of security guards arrive at Provost's office. The publisher has already packed his suitcases for a speedy getaway. The lead guard, the one cuffed to the Raven box, sets his precious cargo on the desk and stands discreetly at an arm's length while Provost unlocks it and checks its contents. Satisfied, he slams it shut. He reaches into his top drawer for an envelope, which he hands to his personal secretary.
Open this in 1 hour. Phone my wife and tell her where to meet me. No trouble in the way I take it.
No, sir, Mr. Provost. We came straight from the bank vault.
Copter should be just touching down. We'll have you to safety out of here in no time.
External rooftop on Batman.
Here comes Santa Claus, echoes from up the streets. Batman watches as a copter descends towards the helipad on the roof of the Globe.
Internal corridor outside office a moment later.
We'll check the stairs. See you on the roof.
No, my private elevator. It's safer.
Internal elevator shaft that moment.
Shooting down on the car as it rises, the shaft above it is filled with birds. Starlings, crows, pigeons, and the like, swooping and gliding amongst the gears and cables.
External roof of Globe building that moment.
In the background, the helicopter is on its pad, the rotors still spinning. In the foreground, the small dormer-like structure that houses the stairway. The metal access doors open, and the first of the guards steps wearily out, rifle at the ready. He smiles back at his pal.
No way. They don't pay us enough to tangle with Batman.
A black-gloved, chrome-taloned hand snakes around the edge of the dormer and rakes across his throat.
Internal elevator car that moment.
Sweat beads up on Provost's lip as the guard hits the up button and the car begins to rise. Suddenly, the lights go out. The car stops with a lurch.
What is it? What's happening?
Suddenly, there in the dark, they hear a series of loud popping sounds, which could be gunfire.
External Gotham Square that moment on crowd.
Singing Here Comes Santa Claus at the top of their lungs. Happy faces beam, no one hears anything unusual over the music.
External rooftop across street on Batman.
Batman is straining to listen. We get another faint series of pops, barely audible over the caroling from below, and a loud put-put-put of the helicopter blade. He can't really be sure he's heard anything at all. He scans the roof of the Globe building, but he can't see what's happening beyond the big steel globe structure and the neon sign.
External Globe building rooftop that moment.
The Catwoman lets fly with another burst of automatic fire from the dead guard's rifle. The helicopter is still idling, but no one's left to fly it. The rooftop is littered with stiffs.
Internal elevator car that moment.
Pitch black. Pre-verbal groans and murmurings of fear issue from the darkness. An eerie red light kicks on the emergency generator, and we see Provost, backed into a corner of the car, twitching and jumping like a crazed spasm. The guard, in a futile effort to placate him, points up at the light.
There, Mr. Provost. See? The generator's just kicked in. It's just an electrical problem.
Provost is marginally consoled. They hear a strange twittering noise in the shaft above them. Provost starts babbling again. The guard slaps him across the face, but the twittering has him a bit concerned as well. He stares up at the ceiling of the car as he punches buttons on the panel. With another lurch, the car begins to move.
There, see? It's moving. We're fine.
It's going down. We're going down!
Internal elevator shaft that moment.
The birds in the shaft have all roosted on top of the car. They are patiently riding it down as it descends.
Internal elevator car that moment.
The car stops again. Provost is totally losing it. The exasperated guard grabs him and shakes him.
Okay, Mr. Provost, I'm gonna have a look through the trap door, but I need you to help me. Okay? You have to help.
Provost nods and tries to get a grip on himself. The guard looks up at the trapdoor in the ceiling of the car. He can't reach it. He uncuffs the box containing Provost's raven from his wrist and stands on it, still short. Unholstering his gun and using it as a prod, he can almost reach the trapdoor. He jumps up and, poking with his gun, manages to dislodge the panel slightly. More twittering. Provost and the guard look up through the tiny crack in the ceiling and see nothing but darkness.
Probably just some bird that's gone into the shaft. Now calm down. You'll have to give me a boost.
The guard climbs back atop of the raven box. Provost gives him a boost and manages to catch hold of the lip of the trapdoor.
Okay, help me out. Steady!
Provost wraps both arms around the guard's wriggling legs and tries to hoist him upward.
Internal shaft on roof of car that moment.
From a vantage level with the roof of the car, we see the guard's fingers clinging to the lip of the trapdoor. Now his head rises into view, pushing the panel aside as he pulls himself upward. He peers around, his brow wrinkles as he sees the bizarre sight. Passels of squawking birds walking back and forth in front of him, strutting and preening mere inches from his face.
Internal elevator car that moment.
The bottom half of the guard dangles from the ceiling. Provost still has his arms wrapped around the guard's knees. All at once, the guard begins to scream as his body jerks and his legs kick wildly, even as blood spatters across the top of his bald dome. Finally, the guard's violent spasms are too much. Provost trips over the raven box, stumbles backwards and lands on his ass in the corner of the car. The guard tumbles in a heap to the elevator floor, his face pecked and clawed beyond recognition. His eyes gone altogether. Provost lets out a series of shrieks. He peers at the open trapdoor, sees the bird staring curiously down at him, and shrieks again. The emergency telephone rings. He stares at it. It rings again. Shielding his eyes and screwing up his courage, Provost crawls across the floor and reaches for the receiver.
16th floor, linens, housewares, ladies' lingerie.
Who is this?
Internal globe basement loading bay that moment.
Newspaper delivery vans are parked in neat rows, all driverless. Frick is sitting with a box full of electrical equipment next to a bank of elevators. All the cars have been locked open here in the basement, except for one, Provost's private elevator, the doors to which are still closed. The Penguin stands beside it, speaking into a red phone.
Mr. Provost, if you want to get out of that car alive, I suggest you follow my instructions to the absolute letter.
As he talks, we see various newspaper employees sprawled on the concrete nearby, dead. A corrugated metal door has been lowered over the loading bay, separating the newspaper production staff from the van pool. They're trapped on the other side, banging away loudly on the door.
Shut up in there. You should see a cord hanging just behind you.
Internal elevator car that moment.
Provost looks over his shoulder and sees the aforementioned cord descending through the trapdoor.
Yes, I see it.
Tie the cord handle of your box.
Provost lets the phone drop. He grits his teeth but hastens to obey. As he's knotting the cord around the handle of the box, a dinky bird flutters down through the trap and sends him into a panic. Practically weeping, he reaches for the phone.
When you're done, I want you to get 2 sharp yanks on the cord.
Cowering in terror, Provost reaches for the cord and yanks it twice.
Who are you? Why are you doing this?
Internal loading bay on Penguin.
Behind him, Frick and Frack are pulling on red berets and Batman sweatshirts. Order of the Bat. Frick climbs into the newspaper delivery van and starts the engine.
Well, Mr. Provost, I guess you could call me an irate reader. And to be perfectly frank, I'm doing this because I hate Garfield.
Chuckling, the Penguin holds a sonic device up to the mouthpiece of the phone.
Internal elevator car that moment.
A shrill whine emanates from the receiver. All at once, the elevator car is full of birds, squawking wildly, flinging themselves against the wall, going insane in the tiny confined space. Provost is screaming like a madman. The birds are in his hair, his face, everywhere. He fights his way over to the panel and begins punching buttons in a frenzy. All at once, the car plunges downward. It's as if the floor has dropped away beneath Provost's feet. He's in freefall.
Internal loading bay on Penguin.
Going down.
He hangs up the phone and steps a discreet distance back from the elevator doors.
Internal elevator shaft that moment.
The Raven box dangles from its cord, and the car rockets uncontrollably downward. A steady stream of birds are making a quick exit from the trapdoor in the roof.
Internal top floor landing that moment.
The Catwoman's on a landing near the stairwell, just below the dormer that leads to the roof. She pries open a pair of elevator doors, and a flock of birds pour out of the empty shaft, making for the open access door a half-story above. She reaches inside, she finds its cord attached to the Raven box and reels it in. She rips off the lock and opens the box for a quick look at her trophy. It's all there, all right. Another Raven, just like the first two. An awful crash from 25 stories down. Rattles the shaft. She makes a disgusted face, grabs the Raven, and bolts for the roof.
External rooftop across street on Batman.
He watches in puzzlement as a vast flock of birds takes flight from the Grove roof access across the square. Something weird is definitely going on. He's about to abandon his post, but down below, the carolers have stopped caroling. The big tree's about to be lit, and they're counting off the seconds.
External Gotham Square corner newsstand.
A ramshackle kiosk is at street level. The news vendor has stepped out onto the sidewalk to watch the tree festivities. A Globe delivery van, its side bearing the Batman Hero or Menace advertisement, cruises past and dumps a bundle of papers on the curb.
External Gotham Square on crowd at tree.
Excitement is building as the seconds tick off. The Christmas lights come on and the crowd breaks into cheers. The orchestra strikes up a sprightly version of Jingle Bells.